So we're on Daf Samach.
The
Mishnah Ayin Mesa. So we had a little mention of this a couple of days ago. It came in Agav in the sugya about Megas guys Miklas Kolish. When you have the Navra Marasa, that the father and the husband are the ones who are being made for. So the more the question how it works, and to figure out the mechanics of what on a brisa, which is referring to this Mishnah, going on this Mishnah, and it had some details over there that came out of Machlokes B'Shamai B'Sela. So we'll go to the Mishnah, maybe we'll say with the Gemara before. And this is the din called Nisrokna, which means emptying out. We have two authorities over here, you have to have both of them, the father and the husband, and then one of them died. So does it get transferred to the remaining authority, and he becomes the sole authority to be mefer or not? So Mesa Avlon Nisrokna V'Shus Laval, but Mesa Baal Nisrokna V'Shus Laval works only one way. If the second way is one that it works, so the first one doesn't work. If the father dies, even though the husband is here by himself, he doesn't get the authority and he can't be made for it. He wait until she becomes an Asua, until he married. But as the Narusa, he's not able to, he's also not made for a children, maybe, okay, I don't know. But when the father died, it doesn't get emptied out to the authority of the husband, and the husband's not going to be able to be made for him, even though now he's alone. But the opposite, Mesa Baal, this if the husband died, so then the authority does get transferred, emptied out to the father, and the father now can be the sole nullifier. He nullifies and I got nullified. As far as that is concerned, in that case, in this way, the father is a stronger power than the husband, because the father does inherit, so to speak, the authority of the husband, and the husband does not.
Goes back.
Okay, it says in Sirok, the Mepharshim used the word before. I used that. I allowed myself to use that word. The Rosh used that word. The point is that he gets the authority that the husband had until now, and that's called the Sirok. The Sirok also that doesn't just mean, it's interesting. It doesn't just mean that there are two authorities. One is not here, so he has everything. And the Sirok means that it gets emptied out, it gets poured over, it gets transferred. So I'm not sure why I use that word. There is a transfer over here of authority. So as far as that goes, the father is stronger than the husband. And b'davar acher, that's what the period would be. And then b'davar acher, you have a koach habal mikoach. Avsha habal mefer bebeger, v'abeinu mefer bebeger. Is a way that the husband is stronger than the father, that the husband is able to nullify the neder of his wife, even when she's a Bulgaris, which is 12 and a half already. And it's 6 months after she brought 2 sons. And the father cannot. Once she becomes a Bulgaris, then she's out of the jurisdiction of the father. The father can't be mefer than Dharma anymore. The Gemara will talk about some more details about that, but that's a general thing. That surely is true, is simple, that the father, once she becomes a Bulgaris, he can't be made for anymore, even though once she's a Bulgaris, he doesn't have a jurisdiction over her anymore. The Gemara put down this Mishnah a couple. That was the Mishnah we saw before. If the husband, before he died, he affirmed the neder, even though he died, the father cannot anymore nullify it anymore. That was the Gemara before. 2 ways we had before. And the other chiddush, which caused the Machlokes B'Shamai B'Sela, was the case where the father was mefer before the husband died. The husband died, and it says usually when the husband dies, the father does get the rishus. But if the father was mefer before the husband died, so you think what's the problem? Now, after the husband died, he should inherit, he should get transfer of the authority to himself. So before, the Gemara said it depends if you hold Megas guys, Miklas Kolish. If you hold Megas guys, so then he could. Then there's enough meat, there's enough significance in the husband and the husband's chelik, even though the father took off his chelik, but it didn't affect the husband's chelik. And therefore, now that the husband died, the father can retake it. But if you hold Miklas Kolish, so once the father weakened the whole neder, even the part that the whole koach hafara, even the part that the husband had got weakened, then he wouldn't be able to get a hold on it to be able to be made. So that the Gemara is not going to say by us. It was a brisa on this Mishnah, which the Gemara mentioned before, and it doesn't repeat it again. So in general, what does it say? That the father does get transfer of the authority of the husband if the husband dies, but the husband does not get the authority of the father if the father dies. So the Gemara first asks my timer, why should that be so? Why should the first halacha, that husband does not get it, lonus rokna, why is that? So really, we would think the other way. The first, the Gemara should explain who says that it does get transferred, which the Gemara is going to explain in a second. So it's going in the order of the Mishnah, and first it says that it's not transferred, and the kasha is, why is it not transferred? The same way we're going to see in a second, even though we don't know the source yet, but it's going to see in a minute that the father does get the transfer if the husband dies, with whatever source that's going to be. So how come you don't learn out that the husband should be the same as the father? That's all included in the my timer. How come the husband is different than the father? The father is going to get the transfer if the husband dies, and the husband does not get it if the father dies. Why not? The answer is so I don't have a good shot. And the Rebbe Sevilla says that that's the parsha where it talks about that the father does have jurisdiction over his daughter. And the Gemara said even by Narusa, even if she's Narusa, also it's not the husband alone, it's together with the father. We had the drushes of that before, we had two drushes before. And he somehow was supposed to see it in this pasuk, even if the father dies. And again, I never would have thought that. But in Rebbe Sevilla, what do you see? It says that the father has jurisdiction over her as long as he's in his house. But he died. So how do you see that even if he died also, it can't be the husband? I'm not sure what the drush is. It's supposed to see in this pasuk that the father has the jurisdiction over the daughter. It can't be that the husband is going to be made by himself, like the Gemara used the expression before, and about made for that was in the bottom of Samaches, and about made for the husband never can do it by himself, only can do it together with the father. This is the pasuk, but I don't understand the simple pshat. How do you see in the pasuk that it means even if the father dies? That's what the Gemara wants to learn out. That even if the father dies, the husband can't do it because it says "B'nu Rebbe Saviha." So it's supposed to be mashma somehow.
Why the husband not?
Why the husband? What do you mean? This is why the husband not, right? This pasuk says why the husband not, because it says it has to be after the father. But we know that the husband also that gets. The husband usually does. In the pasuk, this going on the Namur Rasa, where the Gemara darshans that is both. So we know already that is both. And I was saying, but if the father died, the husband doesn't get it by himself. Why? Because it says in the Rebbe Saviha. And you see from that even after the father dies, also the husband doesn't get it. That's what we're supposed to see, but I don't see it so well. Just to see the rush on this. On the bottom over here, my time alone is broken. I was just the Baal devil on the Migma. We should have learned out that this husband is the same as the father. If the father, we'll see in a minute, is able to get the transfer of the authority after the husband dies, why does the husband get it the same way? And the answer is even after he dies. Okay, that's what it says. I don't understand the drashim. Okay, the Gemara continues. So now we want to know the second halacha. Second halacha was that Meis Habal, it is this rokna to the father. How do we know that? How do we know Meis Habal this rokna v'shuslav? Meis Habal this rokna v'shuslav and all. How do you know that the father does get the transfer of the authority if the husband dies? This is the pasuk where it talks about the orus, that she marries to a man and she has a nether on her, so he has the ability to be made for it. The Gemara said the Gemara said with the above before it has to be the father also, but it says the halacha that the husband also. Now we want to learn out that even after the husband dies, the father gets back to authority, and you're going to see it from this pasuk. How do you see it in this pasuk? So the Gemara is going to say, Rash, of course it's a Rash, everything's a Rash over here. Hayosi here is mashma 2 times. Hayosi here. He could have said 1 time. Didn't he yell ish? What does that to say? Hayoti here. It's a double term, double lashon. And the Gemara is going to learn out. There's a nuance over here that sounds like she even might have gotten married 2 times. What's the case? And the Gemara continues in Amud Beis. Makish kodmei havaya shniya, lekodmei havaya rishona. There's havaya rishona, havaya shniya. 2 times that she got married. This the woman, she became an arsa. But it's much more so. Even if she would have gotten married a 2nd time, also it would be true that the father, whatever was till now was going to be the same thing. Means the state of being before the 2nd marriage is similar to being before the 1st marriage. Before the 1st marriage, she never was married. She just had a father. And then surely the father is the one who is the authority to nullify. Now it says that if she married and then got divorced, whatever the case would have been, or let's say the Kemara's case that the husband died and she got this arsa a second time, she's back to the same status before Kodmei Havaya Shnia, the pre, how would you call Kodmei? The whatever is preceding. Preceding the second marriage is similar to preceding the first marriage. Markesh Kodmei Havaya Shnia, the Kodmei Havaya Rishon. The pasuk says that the father could nullify his daughter's nedarim, and then she gets married, so then it's both the father and the husband. And it's mashma over there, even if it would happen 2 times, will be similar, will be a double take, it would go over to the same thing over again. So it's mashma that before the second marriage is similar to before the first marriage. If so, just like before the first marriage, the father was on his own, his daughter was not married. That's the halacha that a father is allowed to be made for the nedarim of his daughter as long as she's a naira. Now it says that it happens the second time that the husband died, and she's again in the same position of getting married again. When she gets married again, he'll be together with the second husband. But till she gets married, it's the same status as it would have been before the first marriage. And that means that he's the sole authority to be made for the nedarim. So here we learn out that if the husband dies, it goes back to the father. Is everybody happy with that?
What is code name?
Code made like code them. The precedence.
The one that the husband made
The status before the second marriage is similar to the status before the first marriage.
oh,
The status before the second marriage means that the first husband died. That's why she's again before the second marriage, because the first husband died. And she's back into the same status that it was before the first marriage. Before the first marriage, the father was the full rights. He did it. So now too, that the husband died and she's in a status of before the second marriage, also the father has the full authority, and that's called the srokna. That's called that the authority of the first husband emptied itself out, transferred to the father. That's the Gemara source that the father gets back the authority to be made for by himself.
Why are we talking about 2 marriages here?
That's our drush. We want to know what's the status of the woman after her husband dies. So it's called, after the first husband dies, that's called she's in a state of being before the second marriage. If she gets married or not, doesn't really make a difference to us if she gets married or not. But the point is that she's after the first marriage. The way the pasuk tells us that, and the nuance of the drasha is that hayosi here, that both, even if she'd be married 2 times, also it has the same status. Both statuses are the same. That means that she goes back to the father. So if what was the case over here? This woman made a neder. She had a husband and a father, and at that point, both of them would have to be made for the neder. And now the husband died, so the father's alone, and the father she's now before the second marriage, if she chooses to get married, okay, but she's before the second marriage. So it's go back to the same status as before the first marriage, that the father is the one who's the authority to nullify an nedarim. That's called Meis Habal, the Surah Rishus. If the husband died, the authority transfers to the father, and he's the sole authority to nullify a neder. The Gemara Kasha on this drasha still. Fourth line. Maybe, even though the pasuk is saying a drasha that it gives him an authorization, maybe that's only if it was not seen, it was not fit for the oros. That would have mean that if she made a neder after a simple shot, she made a neder after he died. If she made a neder after he died, or the Rosh says, he didn't hear the neder, if it wasn't in the parsha of the first marriage, what was the case again we're talking about? That she was married and she had a father and a husband, and both of them have jurisdiction to nullify. Both of them have to nullify jointly, and the husband died. We say the father could nullify by himself. Maybe that's only a neder that she would have made after the husband died, or while he was alive, but he didn't hear about it. So then, when the husband dies, so then the father is the sole authority. But if it was something that was near the oros, it was fit for the oros, means that it was something that he would have to also nullify. It was a neder that she made while she was married and to the first husband, and both the father and the oros at that time would have to be mefer, and then the oros died. Who says that in this case the father gets the jurisdiction? Maybe in this case the person that's talking about. The person that's talking about a case where the whole neder came into being after the oros, and the oros never was able to do it. For instance, I think the simple words would have meant that she made the neder after he died. The Russia is also included in the kasha is if the Oris didn't hear about it. The Oris didn't hear about it. So he never was in the parsha of being Mefer, and then
Did
he died. So then the father has the sole authority. But if he heard about it, maybe even if he dies, the father doesn't get the full jurisdiction. And the words inside, maybe this halacha that says that the father gets the jurisdiction back is only kind of an eder that was not fit for the oros to nullify because he didn't hear about it. But if it was an eder that was fit for the oros to be nullified because he heard about it and then he died, maybe the father is not authorized now. He doesn't get back that authorization. It's already in the parsha of the oros. Then my answer is even Adam Shalom Neola Oros. You wouldn't need a special drasha for that. If it was a neder that the first husband had nothing to do with, he didn't hear about it. She made it after he died. You don't need a pasuk to say that it goes back to the father. That special goes back to the father. This special chiddush that before the second marriage is similar to before the first marriage is only in this case where there was oros involved, and now it goes back to the status of before the first marriage. But if it would have been that the oros was not in the parsha b'chlal, so then you wouldn't need a special pasuk. If there's a special pasuk, it's coming to say this Allah. Okay. So we found out the source that transfers to the father. We found out also before the beginning of the Gemara that does not transfer to the husband because the pasuk says the Rebbe Savia. I'm not sure what the drush is, but that was the first line of the Gemara that it does not go to the husband. If the father dies, it doesn't go to the husband. You don't learn out the husband from the father, even though each one decides to have a drush. You would have learned out one from the other. So the Gemara says you don't learn out because it says ben Rebbe Savia, and the husband is not going to get the jurisdiction of the father. The Mishnah ended off, just to scroll back to the Mishnah, that we just finished talking about Yafa Koach Avni Koach Abal. This first halacha was a case where the father is stronger than the husband, that he gets back jurisdiction by himself, and the husband doesn't get jurisdiction by himself.
Zel is part of that.
Right, that was ending off what we just finished saying. Bazar means in the above case. In this case, we just spoke about. In this case, we said that Mesav Lon Nisrokna Labal, but Mesav Bal Nisrokna was just as far as that. But in this case, and as far as this is concerned, the father is stronger than the husband. But don't think that it's always the father is stronger than the husband. And some things the husband is stronger than the father. As far as another law is concerned, the husband is stronger than the father, and that is Shabal Mefer Beger, the word Beger is from the word Bogeris, which means mature, that when the girl becomes mature, and that's 6 months after she became a Nara, after she became a Gedola. When she brings two Saras, two pubic hairs, that's when she's a Gedola, and 6 months later she becomes a Bogeris. And then she's not anymore in the domain of her father, she's not under his jurisdiction.
So everything we learned in the last 4 days was all about when she's a
Nara Marasa. But if it will be a Bogeris, then she's out of the jurisdiction of her father.
And she's totally under the Baal's regime.
Right, and now it says that not exactly, but we'll see soon. We'll see right away. That's how I said it, I think a couple of days ago, but we'll see right away that I was wrong. But here it says that the husband does have jurisdiction to nullify even when she's a Bulgaris. And that's a regular girl that he marries. She's a big girl, right? It can be forever. The husband can nullify his wife's nedarim. But the father cannot. When she's a Bulgaris, she's out of his jurisdiction. And now the Gemara goes on there.
We just have two things. We have one reason that the father has to go up, and one reason that the father has to go up.
Right, a reason or a case. In one aspect, the father is stronger. One aspect, the husband is stronger. They have nothing to do with each other. These two halachas, but they want to show that. Don't think that the father is always stronger. Sometimes in some aspects, the husband is stronger. So it said that the husband could be Mayfair, his wife's nedarim, even as a Bulgaris. A case we would think was that he married the same case that she married as he till now, that he married her as a Namarasa, he was Marasa as a Nara, and she got bigger. She became 12 and a half. He married her when she was 12. And at that point, both the father and the husband would be the jurisdiction to nullify. And then she became 12 and a half. She had a 12 and a half birthday. Now she became a Bulgaris. Now the father's out and the husband remains. And the husband's the one who has the jurisdiction. That's the simple meaning of the Mishnah. But the Gemara says, no, it's not true. It's not going to be true. Mechdi, Misa Motzia, Mirishus Sahav, you can put on the words if you want to. Misa Motzia, Mirishus Sahav, Ubabus Motzia, Mirishus Sahav. There are two things that take her out of the jurisdiction of the father. One is if the father dies, and one is if she becomes a Bulgaris. Either one of these cases, she's out of the jurisdiction of the father. the Rosh points out that even if it was the Chiddush that he dies, of course, he's out of his jurisdiction. That even if there are sons, they don't take over the father's jurisdiction over their sister. So when he dies, she's out of the jurisdiction of her father, and Bagrus also takes her out of the jurisdiction of her father. Just like when we had the father and the husband, and the father died. We said a second ago that was the ratio, that it doesn't get transferred to the husband. So there's no difference between the husband, the father dying, or the girl becoming a Bulgaris. She left the father's jurisdiction is not going to be a reason why the husband's going to be able to be mefer by himself. Just like when the father died, we don't allow the husband to be mefer by himself. So too, if she made a neder while she was under the jurisdiction of the father, and then she grew up, and now she says, I'm out of the jurisdiction, and now the husband's going to take over solely. No, it's the same idea that he's not going to, the jurisdiction of the father is not going to be transferred to the husband, not if he dies, and not if she becomes a Bulgaris. So the Gemara rejects it.
Or is this an assumption?
The Gemara says it's pashut. That the Gemara rejects the pashut on the Mishnah. That can't be that can't be what the Mishnah means. Even though it says that
The father, what did the father do?
the father didn't do anything. Just the daughter became 12 and a half.
There wasn't something done in there.
Of course, a neder. Yeah, but also homosexual is a neder. So the girl made a neder, and
The father, what did
she's
the
an
father do?
amurasa, and the father didn't do anything, but she became 12 and a half. Now we want to know who's going to be made for this neder. She made a neder. He married. What was the case over here?
She married and then while she was in Nara.
When I is the question only if she made the neder? I understood that she made the neder after the 12 and a half. She married her. I think this I didn't look into it enough, but and also it's
He
a
married her when she was young.
he married her when she was 12.
Yeah.
And both of the father and both of them were shutfin in the koach
Of the daughter.
to women. And she became 12 and a half. Now she's 13. She's 13 already. And she made a neder.
So wow.
Wow.
So I think the Gemara says not. I'm wrong.
I would like to understand that she made a neder, but they found out about it only after she was because the neder she made when she was still married.
Is there a difference?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, because that was the neder.
The young Shlomo, the day that they found out about it is after she's already 12 and a half. She's a Bulgarian.
But when she made the neder, that it was under their jurisdiction, joint jurisdiction.
Okay.
Let's say she was not married. She was not married. Bulgaris makes it.
Bulgarian makes a
The
neder.
father doesn't have.
Right. That's going to be the next case. I think that's going to be tomorrow's next choice. That's going to be the next tomorrow. That's going to be the next choice. The first.
I'm talking about now. She's not Mekudesh. She's never Mekudesh. Once she becomes a Bulgaris, the father has no rishos.
Right. She made a neder.
If she makes a neder as a naira, then if the father hears about it only half a year later, he can still
Right. Right. It doesn't have to be the day that she made the neder, the day that he heard about it. So usually you hear about it, as long as he hears about it when she's a naira, so he can nullify it. If he hears about it after she's a Bulgarian, he cannot. Now we're talking about that she was married.
I'd like to say that she was married and she made a neder when she's a naira morosa, and now she became a Bulgaris, and now her father died.
The
Sorry.
father didn't die.
And now is the
If the
issue.
father would have died, what's the case
No,
of the
not
father?
the father.
But the more is comparing it to the father. We're learning out for the same case as the father died.
Okay.
That if, what was the case? That of Nisrokna? When did she make it up? The case was that Nisrokna would be not the same, everything happened the same day. True?
I'd like, it'd be easy for me to understand that the whole issue is if the father still has some time of a possibility to be maybe the neder. It would only be if she made a neder, which is a naira, not a Bulgaris.
If we could talk about just maybe to go back to myself, to go back to the case of Nisrokna. What's the case of Nisrokna? Mace, Abal, Nisrokna, which is alone, that's the low Nisrokna case. Now, 1 second, just get myself. You want this case? Mesa Avlon Nisrokna, which is the what's the case?
That's the easy one. She's a naira.
She's an hour. She made a neder,
Both of them are supposed to be.
The shutfin.
and
And the father.
when is they heard about it? They didn't hear about it. That was the more before. They spoke about all these different cases.
Right.
And even if the most extreme case that only spoke never just about the most extreme case.
But he was never talking about a beginner's.
Right, I want to first get to the smoke case first. That's the maze case, the maze case, which was going to learn out in that case. One is the case, I didn't think about the details. I just was going, it was very general. But when would the nether make? When did they hear about it? They weren't talked about before. If he didn't hear about it, he heard about it, he was Mayfair. He heard about it, was quiet, then he died the same day or the next day.
He was not Mekayim the Neder. Basically,
He was not Mekayim the nether, and then he died. And the father was able, and this was the husband died. One second. On this work now. He said, well, this work never just now. We want this case, which case do we want again? We're going to learn out from the lowest work. Now, what's going to go in the case of Mesav, on this work never just now. And now we talk about Bogeris. What do you say? Just like Lonis work the Rishus Labal. So also, if she becomes a Bogeris, Lonis work the Rishus Labal. How do you understand? How do you explain?
If she became a beginner, but I'd like to understand that the father only comes into play if the neder was made when she was an iron. And then she became a beginner.
But not what?
No. She made the neder when she was a beginner. What's the happen that the father should see together with the others?
You can't talk about having whose jurisdiction it is. That if since as the Gemara talk about, even though the neder wasn't made too much later. I thought I talk about the jurisdiction over the neder, even if the neder there was no neder was made yet. But if it was a time that they had jurisdiction, it doesn't get transferred to the husband. I didn't think it made a difference when the neder was. But you don't want to say that. You're saying that it's only if the neder.
I don't know. I don't know the halacha. It's the whole. I don't know.
Okay, we'll look into it more just to get the translation. Meanwhile, I'll try to get better for tomorrow or the next day. Again, what's the case that the husband could be Mayfair when she's a Bulgarian? If the case was that he married her when she was a Naira, and both of them had rishus at that time, because there was she was a Naira, so the husband and the father both of them had, and then Bagra, and we're going to say that now the husband is on his own. So we're not talking about. We're not going to say when did she make the net. That's what Avon wants to talk about. When did she make the net? Okay, I don't know. Mechdi, they might think that's not true. He's not going to have jurisdiction by himself. There's a comparison between the death of the father and the girl growing up. Misa alone is both of them. She leaves the jurisdiction of the father, either if the father dies or if he grows up. Either one of them makes her leave the father's jurisdiction. Misa alone is just like when the father dies, the authority is not transferred to the husband. Also, when she grows up to become 12 and a half, to become a Bogeres, the authority that the father had does not get transferred to the husband, and he can't be Mayfair. Let's look at the Alach over here. Maybe you're right. Let's see. Is Aleph over here? What's that? Let's see if yes. Where the Shulchan Aruch says it. Maybe it sounds like you. They didn't hear her nether. It talks about they didn't hear the nether until she was a Bulgaris. Means she made a nether when she was a Nara, and then they didn't hear about it until she was Bulgaris. Levado. So he says the way you said it, that she made a nether earlier when she was an Ira, and then she became a Bulgaris, and then they heard about it. So the Oris cannot do it by himself. Because why? Because the nether was made when the father was the jurisdiction. Okay, I'll try to work that out. But the Gemara says that it can be because of this problem that you have a hekesh between the Misa and the Bagras. So that can be what the Mishnah means, that the husband could make her when she's a Bulgarian. In this case, he wouldn't be able to. Ella, what's going to be the case? Shekitcho kishehi Bulgaris. What would you have said after listening? that even if he married her when she was an Arab, but the neder wasn't made until the Bulgaris also would have been good. That would have been a simple case. She would have said that if she made the neder after she's a Bulgaris, so now he's the one who's the jurisdiction. The more than have to jump that he married her after she was a Bulgaris. But okay, let's leave it on the side this point. When did she make the neder? But the case must be not that he married her when she was an Arab and she became a Bulgaris, but he married her after she's a Bulgaris. We have a Mishnah about this already. Now the truth is that I was making a mistake a couple of days. I forgot about the Mishnah we had in Ksubas that said many times that she has to be in a sewer. That the forest of the Baal only gets the jurisdiction to be made for his wife's Adam only after she's in a sewer, not when she's in Arusim. We had a few times about that. Yorsha, Mefer Nedarim.
Mefer Nedarim means completely, but partially he does.
So when the father is out over here, when it's the case of a Bulgaris, when is the din that a Bulgaris, the husband can be made for? So a regular Bulgaris, if he marries her and it's only she's 13, 14, 15, and she's only in Arusa, he can't be made for only till the soon. So that I forgot there was a mistake. If I said it, so it was a mistake. That's what the Gemara is saying over here, that it's pashut that he can't. But the Gemara brings down the Mishnah where it says that once he's chayv in mazonos, so then it's issue if he could. If he's chayv in mazonos, could he? So the pashtus we're going to pass later on. We're going to see it soon, a couple of days. That only after she's in a sewer, we pass like the Rabbanan and about made for Ella Ashetikanas Levesa. We can't be made for others can. While there's a joint shutfis when she's also a Nara Namarosa, so then both of them together.
And then when she becomes Bulgaris, nobody?
When she's a Bulgaris, then nobody.
When she's a Bulgaris, then nobody?
I think so.
Okay. And then when she becomes in the sewer, only
the husband, and I think that then he's not made for Bekodman. He's not going to be able to be made for this neder. So the husband is made for a wife's neder is not a horus if she's a Bulgaris. Only if she's in the sewer. Then there's a Mishnah we had over there, we spoke about over there in Ksubas, and it's going to talk about over here in the Dharma, that if he was supposed to marry her, he was supposed to be Kohen already, he was supposed to go through with the marriage, consummate the marriage, and he didn't. So then we say you got to give her mazona. She's waiting to get married. So we give 30 days for an almana, 12 months for a basula, and then he has to marry her. And if he doesn't marry her, so then he has to give her mazonas. And then it's going to be a machlokas. If he has to give her mazonas, does he do a paras nedarim also? Does he also have jurisdiction? Even though he didn't marry her, there's not Nisuin, he's only Erison, but he's Erison where he's paying her mazonas. It could be the fact he's paying her mazonas, maybe that's the reason why he should be able to be made for nedarim, which is machlokas coming up on the Ayin Gimel Beis. I'll just read it instead of scrolling. Right away, the next couple of little lines say at the beginning, the first couple of words. That even though she's not yet Nisua, she's only in Arusa, but since it's already 12 months, and he's supposed to marry her, and since he's not marrying her, he's supposed to do Nisuan, Knisa L'Chuppah. And since he's not, so he's Chayv b'Mazonos. So Belezer says that's enough reason that he can make for Nedarim also. Once he's giving Mazonos, he has the jurisdiction to be made for Nedarim. And the Chum say no. So this whole halacha that we're talking about is only going to be according to the Rabbanan, according to Belezer, according to Rabbanan argued. The Rabbanan said no such thing, that he cannot, Arusa, Bulgaris, he's not going to be made for, only until she becomes an Nesua. But according to Belezer, yes. According to Belezer, it would be true that the husband could, since he's being mazonos. So that's what the Gemara used to say. It's interesting that the Rosh puts in the words over here. Right over here, even he has the girsa. I'm not sure if he has the girsa or he just puts it in himself. But let's notice the Rosh over here. The third wide line. That's what the mission is going to mean. Not just a plain rusa. It has to be that the time came and she's already should have married her and she's getting mazonos. So the Morris Kash is and the time came and he's giving her mazonos, and that's the reason why he could be made for by himself. When the mission says that Arus is that Arus, how does it say? Shabal made for bebeger means this case of a Arusa who's paying mazonos, You could say the Mishnah just means Baal means the Nesua. It doesn't say Oros, it says Baal. But if you talk about an Oros, the only case is going to be where the time came and he's paying his owners. And it goes contra Belazer. The Rabbanan are going to argue. The Rabbanan say they doesn't. That even it has to be Tekanas Leshusa. Tanina Chadazimna. So Mishnah later on, don't be too much nice to say the same thing. What does it say in the fine Gimel? Etc. Over there it says, according to Belazer, he could be Mefer. According to Rabbanan, he cannot. It's interesting how the Gemara says Tanina Chadazimna. It's not just a Tanina Chadazimna. It's a Machlokis. Amisha says that as a stam that he could be Mefer, and over there later on it says it's a Machlokis. But the Gemara is happy with that. That's okay. Why does it have to repeat itself? It says it later on anyway. Why does it say it over here by us? Before the Gemara goes further, to answer the Kasha, it has the parentheses that it's bothered by, and we'll put it in parentheses, and it goes until Mikamakum Kasha. The Kasha so far is that we had too much nice, and only too much nice for the same thing. Amisha says that the husband could be made for the beggar, and it's only going to mean, if it's a Oros, it's going to mean only after he hasn't paid Mazonas, he hasn't married her for 12 months, and he's giving her Mazonos, and it goes contra Belazer. And the Kasha is Tanina Chadazim, Belazer says that later on. And the Gemara is going to say the answer in a couple of lines, the Gemara is going to say two Jerusalem later on. Before the Gemara goes further, it has a side Kasha, has nothing to do with us, but it's a side point to explain the Mishnah over there. Al Gufa Kasha, the Mishnah itself is inherently contradicting. Amrit Abogerish Shasha Shnei Masachodesh. That doesn't make sense. Bogerish Shasha Shnei Masachodesh. The Bogeris Lamali Shnei Masachodesh. Bogeris Balamad Yom Sagila. Does the Bogeris have to? When does she start getting mazonos? When does she have a complaint? When does she have a claim to her husband that he should have married me already? And if not, you have to pay me mazonos. So the Mishnah seems to say a Bogeris, 12 months. And the Mosgash is, the Bogeris doesn't need 12 months. The Bogeris 30 days is enough. So there's a difficulty with this Gemara, but just to make it simple, the Rishonim are bothered that there's Gemara in Ksubis that says this in the name of Rav Huna, and the Gemara over there slugs it up. Over there it comes out the Tifta of Rav Huna, it's not true. Put aside that caution. You put aside that problem that the Gemara seems to contradict each other. The plain meaning the Gemara would say that Rav Huna said that a Bogeris is a din that a Basula gets 12 months. A Basula, after they did Erisin, so then we write down the date, and the husband has 12 months to marry her. If he does marry her within 12 months, so then he has to start giving his owners. Rav Huna said this only by a Nara, a young girl, but once she's a Bogeris, she gets everything ready, and in 30 days she'll be ready. And then he has to marry her within 30 days. So based on that Gemara, Rav Huna, the Gemara is asking, the mission doesn't make sense, but the Gemara would ask the same question. A Bogeris also has to wait 12 months before she's entitled to Mazonas. She doesn't need 12 months, it's 30 days. Over there, the Gemara comes out, it's not true. The Gemara over there says it's not true, that she does have to have 12 months. So it can be the Mishnah simpler. But will be the Gemara the way it seems to say. And the Gemara answers, to me, Bogeris, put in the vote. Bogeris, Bogeris does not need 12 months. And the Shasid Beis Chodesh would be a Nara that does need 12 months. The case would probably be that she got married before the 12 months, 6 months before, because the whole difference between a Nara and a Bogeris is 6 months. What's the case of 12 months? I think the Rishonim have the problem. But since Rav Huna over there in Ksuba says that a Bogeris does not get 12 months, only 30 days, so the Mishnah doesn't read. It's here, it says Bogeris Shashasa. The answer is a Bogeris Vishashasa. And the case of Bogeris is not going to be 12 months, that'll be enough to be 30 days. And the case of a Nara, that'll be the case of 12 months. Maybe a Ketana also.
What's that?
That's the whole difference. You put in the vote that it's not one case, the Bogeris who waited 12 months. It's a Bogeris and a Ketana or a Naira that waited 12 months. A different girl. A Bogeris, the point that they explain over there is that what is this all 12 months about? Because after she gets what we call engaged, not engaged, over there was a full Erised, which means Kedushin. She needs time to get married. She needs time to get ready. So they used to give 12 months. But a Bulgaria, she's ready, what you call like an old maid. She's ready 12 and a half. So she's not going to start getting ready for a chasana after she's going to get a chasana. She gets it before a chasana. She doesn't have a chasana yet, but she'll get her wedding dress ready. That's the issue. How much time does she need to get ready for the wedding? But Rav Huna over there says that a Bulgaria does not get 12 months, only 30 days. So the mission doesn't make sense. The mission says Bulgaria is 12 months. So put it above and everything's good. The Rishonim argue are bothered that the Gemara there is the opposite. We don't pass like Rav Huna. So what's the problem? Leave it the way it is. So they have either a pshat or they have a different girsa. The Rush changes the girsa around. That's first the Gemara, the girsa, Bogeres, Misha then it changes it to Shosa, takes out the vote. So I didn't get clarity, but I think that the Gemara reads simply just one problem, a major problem, that we don't pass like this. Why is the Gemara in Kasha as well? Okay, we'll leave it as a Kasha. But then this is not against Gemara at all. Gemara, that's a side problem about Shas Yibis Chodesh. We can leave the whole thing out. You come up from Kasha, back to the Kasha again. How can you have to have two?
You always get 5 months less then.
What is that?
Bulgaris all gets 30 days, while the Nara gets 12 months. So
Right.
the Bulgaris has, so Nara has extra 5 months.
Is that? I'm not following. The Nara gets 12 months.
So the Nara doesn't have to get married until she's 13. While the Bulgaris has to get married when she's 12 and 2/3.
I think that the Taisa says, I'm not sure if I'm understanding well, or I'm not sure if I understand the Taisa well, but I think Taisa says that the rush that a Bulgaris gets her wedding gown ready, whatever that means, or everything she needs to get married, is if she doesn't have a chassan yet. So then she's, what's the word? She's tense. And she therefore wants to make sure she gets everything ready, that when she gets the chassan, she'll be able to get married right away. But if she did get arusa, she was nisarsa already, so she's not so nervous. So therefore, she doesn't get everything ready. She's still entitled to 12 months. Does that answer the question? If I understood the question correct,
Maybe. Okay.
that should be in
I think
this.
so.
I think that's the
Okay.
in Ksubas over there. So back to the kasha over here, that it says 2 times the same thing. Amish says that a husband could be made for the nedarim of his wife, the Bulgaris, and the Mishnah a couple of pages later says the same thing. That according to Abu Lezer at least, that a Bulgaris, even though she's only in Arusa, once the husband is paying the zonos, he's the one who has the jurisdiction to be made for the nedarim. So why do you need too much nice to say the same thing? And my answer is one of 2 tirbutzim, that either both twists are going to be that one is the main Mishnah, the other one is only Agav. One teretz says that really our Mishnah is the real Mishnah, that there was enough. Our Mishnah was the first Mishnah and it's enough. And he didn't have to repeat it again. Why did he repeat it again? To tell you that Rabbanan argue. Over there, Rabbanan argue and say not. This is only Rabbi Lezer's opinion. If you don't have our Mishnah, you think everybody agrees. It has to say the Mishnah over there to say this is only Rabbi Lezer's opinion. Rabbanan say that a husband does not have jurisdiction to be made for his wife's nedarim only after an Nisuin. And the law is not true. I mean, it argues in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that an Orus, if you want to say that, I don't see the words where it says an Orus over here, but if the Gemara sees that our Mishnah is talking about an Orus, so Orus has the ability to be made for his wife, the Bulgaris, that is only Rabbi Lezer. Rabbanan say not, that a husband cannot be made for his wife's nedarim only after Nisuin. That's why you have to have the Mishnah over there. If you say Bulgaris dafka, you can say it the other way, that the Mishnah over there is the main Mishnah, and how come it says it again over here by us? I did the Nasib Resha Bozeh, Nasib Sefanami Bozeh. This thing about Bozeh, that it wants to say that Bozeh, Yafakocha Shalah, Bozeh, Yafakocha Shalbal, since that's finished telling us halacha where the father is stronger than the husband, the case about the Srokna, that this is Srokna Shishav, it's not the Srokna Shishabal. So it wants to tell you, on the other hand, also we have cases, don't think that it's only one-sided. There are cases that the husband is stronger. So it brings in a Mishnah that's going to say later on, it didn't have to say it again. It said it over here. I have to tell you, there's also cases that the husband has a strength that the father does not have. Okay, that's all for today. Not so clear, but what do? We learned this halacha about Nisrokna, the psukim for the two ways of Nisrokna, that it is Nisrokna one way because of Yossi, it's not Nisrokna the other way to the husband because Ben Rebbe Savia. Agav, we learned, was there any Agav over there? I don't think so. There was no Agav. What? It's not Nisrokna to the husband.
Yeah.
And then this halacha about the Beger, so we said here, so we have to get more clarity about Kitcha. Kishi Naro Bogra, that he doesn't, that the same way you don't say Nisrokna to the husband when the father dies. Also, if she came up Bulgaris, also is on Nisrokna, we have to get more information about that. And as far as a Bulgaris, we seem to see what it says later on that if she's a Bulgaris, Kisho Kishi Bulgaris, the Rabbanan say that he can't be made for till she's in a sewer, only in a sewer, but there's no eris in his not. That's the afghan sewer. And that's why many times in Ksubis that when she was cancelled chuppah, then Bala Meifela, the Metamala, Yorosha, it goes all together. But Rabbi Elazar says that once he's supporting her, even if it's not Nesua, also he's entitled to the jurisdiction to Mefer and nedarim, and that the Gemara puts into our Mishnah that the husband is Mefer Bebeger, and Mishnah says it 2 times, and one time is to tell you the sheet of the Rabbanan that argue and say there's no such thing, and the other reason would be they would say it over there. The reason why he says it by us is Agav, since it's telling you a chumrah of the father, a power of the father, it says the power of the husband also. Okay, Yashikar. We have a few minutes. If anybody would like to do about Asar B'Teves a little bit, we could do it. That would be.
Leave it on.
Leave it on? Leave it on. Okay. We'll go back later on after we finish. We'll go to Avos, but maybe a couple of minutes about this. If thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe we should do it later on after people are on. What if I'd like a break now, or how would you like
No
to?
coffee.
No coffee. Okay.
A couple of hours, that's all. Before you know it.
I have a shir that was written up from Rav Nosson Rotman, what Rav Nosson Rotman said about Sarah Davis. So I think it has a lot of talking to it. The pasuk says in Zechariah, "Toma Hashem Tzvaot, Toma Revit, Toma Chamishit, Toma Shvit, Toma Asiri, Yel Beis Yidal Sasanu L'Simcha, U'L'Moadim Tovim, V'Emes V'Shalom Ehavu." Hashem said, Zechariah is quoting Hashem, that fast of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th, those are the 4 fast days. That's the Tammuz, Shavas of the Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av is Soma Chamishi, the 5th month, Soma Shvi is Soma Gedalia, and Soma Asiri is what we'll talk about. So the 10th month is day based. Will be eventually is going to be to Am Yisrael to be a happiness, a joy, and Moadim. Emes V'Shalom Ahavu, you should love truth and peace. So we're just talking about during the Vaisheni. The pastor is talking about the Vaisheni. They asked if they should continue the fast days. So over there, this is how the pasuk ends off over there, that everything's going to become a Yom Tov. So the Gemara Rosh Hashanah talks about what is the Tzoma Asiri. The other 3, everybody agrees that it's Shabbat B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia. What is the fast of the 10th month? So the Gemara brings a machlokus. If it's Asar B'Teves or it's Chamisha B'Teves, machlokus. And it says here, Reb Shimon says there are 4 things of the Kiva said different than I. And one of them is what is Tzoma Asiri?
There were what, 14?
4. There are both. There are 4 things that Rabbi Kiva says different than me. Rav Shimon is talking. Shimon says there are 4 things Rabbi Kiva says different. One of them is when is Tzoma Asiri? Rabbi Kiva says Tzoma Asiri is Asar B'Teves. And why is it a fast day? Because that's when the king of Bavel, Nebuchadnezzar, when he besieged Yerushalayim. Like it says in the pasuk, "Vayidavar Hashem Elai b'shana she'is v'chodesh ha'asiri v'asar lachodesh lemor ben adam k'sav l'cho asem hayom etzem hayom hazeh samach na l'bavel ad Yerushalayim." Yechezkel wasn't Bavel. At the time of the siege on Yerushalayim, Yechezkel was already in Bavel with those that were taken to exile earlier. And he got a nevuah in Bavel that on this day, you should know that Yerushalayim is being besieged. He was in Bavel, he didn't have communication. There were no phones, no communication. And Hashem told Yechezkel in Bavel that mark this day, that today is the day that Yerushalayim was besieged. See the pasuk again, that in the 9th year, that's when the siege happened, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the day, Hashem told Yechezkel, write down this day. Hashem wanted it to be testimony that Yechezkel had the nevuah, that he knew that it happened. We'll find out later on that happened on the Asar B'Teves. So Hashem told him, write down the Asar B'Teves of the 9th year of Tzidkiyahu, the Yerushalayim was sieged. Samach melech Bavel Yerushalayim. Why is it called Tzoma Asiri? Because it's the 10th month. No, it's out of order. According to this, it's out of order. Shabbat B'Tammuz was when the wall was broken through. Soma Chamishi is Tisha B'Av when the Churban Abayis. Soma Shvi is Tzom Gedalia, which happened after the Churban. And Soma Asiri, according to this drought, it happened in the beginning. This was the first thing that happened 3 years earlier, that there was a siege. So why is it out of order? It should have said Soma Asiri first, because it's going according to the order of the months. 4, 5, 7, 10, even though it's not chronologically the way that it happened, but it's going to be according to the calendar date. That's the order. In order to say the order in the order in the months of the order of the months. That's what Rabbi Kiva. And Rav Shimon says, I argue, Any Omer came. So Masiri means Chamisha B'Teves. What happened on the 5th of Teves? That's when the news arrived after the fact. After the fact of the Korban. After the Korban, it took time. And it happened on Tisha B'Av, but they didn't hear about it until Teves. The news didn't come from Yerushalayim to Babel that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed until the 5th of Teves, the following 5th of Teves.
So this is the first Beis Hamikdash.
Yes.
So
And-
it's, okay.
And they made a fast day of the day that the news arrived, just as the day of the Korban. Also, Yom HaShmuel, Yom HaSreifa. They made a fast day or their morning on the day that they heard the news as the day that it happened.
Whose opinion is that?
That's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This is all Rabbi Shimon talking. Rabbi Kiva says this, and I say differently. And he says that my pshat seems to be better because according to me, it goes in order. The 4th, the 5th, the 7th, the 10th, it goes in order because the 10th was the time that they heard about it after the fact. So he likes his pshat better.
Okay.
Just to point out that everything I'm saying is from Rav Nosson. This is just written down from Rav Nosson and Rav Nosson. So he says that just to point out that the two opinions are two extremes. That one is the extreme beginning, when the siege was the beginning, that was the first thing, the siege, and hearing about it later on, aftermath, was the extreme end. So let's point out that the machlokes is in the extremes. So he has a few kashas over here. One kasha is that siege, l'chora, is not an issue in itself. The siege is just in order to capture. So since there is a fast day for the conquest of Yerushalayim, Shiva Sabbatam was when they broke through. So why is there a special thing about what's the matzah? What is the siege? Something that deserves its own mention, its own commemoration. What is the siege so significant?
That's Rabbi Akiva.
That's really,
Yeah, that's what we do. Right.
that's what we do.
And the other,
It's asking.
well, that's the kasha. Why do we do?
Yeah.
And the kasha on the other one that was even more difficult. The Shema is more difficult. That there's a tzom on the Korban. The fact that they heard about it later on, it seems like a chiddush. It says also Yom HaShmuel, Yom HaSreifa. What is the fact that they heard about it later on? It happened. They heard about it later on, but it happened 5 months earlier. Why is that significant enough to make a special fast day about it? And also, is there any connection between these two opinions? The beginning and the end, is there any connection between, is there any common denominator between them? Agav, he brings down the Minchas
Like
Chinuch
I
says.
just mentioned that the Balkan and Mayfair, I'm just going back to the Balkan Mayfair, when he only hears about it, it can be a month later.
Okay, but it's different because, no,
Why doesn't it?
because
Makes
that's what he
sense.
do. He didn't hear about it. He gave me,
We didn't hear about the
yes, but it happened, but it happened. They didn't know, but now they heard about it. Here, the husband, he has to be able to hear about it in order to nullify it. What can we do to him? Say he should nullify before he hears about it. It's not that. Doesn't seem to be on the same. It is interesting. We talk about Yom Shmuel in the same day in the Gemara, but I don't see the connection. Okay,
When somebody hears about his parent that died, he tears Kriya.
because he first heard
And he
about
said- and he
it.
said
first
Shiva.
heard about it.
But then in the
But then
in the coming years,
it's only on the art side. It's
Right,
not gonna
right,
commemorate
right.
the day.
so you're supporting the question.
Yeah.
There's no reason to make at the time for sure that they mourned when they heard about it. But then the next year is not going to be the day of the hearing. It's going to be the day when it happened.
Mhm.
Nice comparison.
Yeah.
Also, he brings down the sheet of the Minchas Chinuch that says that interesting that these somos, since the Navi says the names of the months, so he says that halachically it's not dafka designated for the day of the month, the whole month. The Chiddush. I don't know what he's talking about over there, but he says that Ani Ogni is like this, Minchas Chinuch talking that the 4 somos, then in the Divrei Kabbalah, they're in the Navi, it's not fixed to a certain day, like a Sarah B'Teves or Tisha B'Av. The whole month, the 10th month, the 9th, the 5th month,
Fourth,
it doesn't have to be dafka on that day. It's going to be the 4 months of Teves, Tammuz, of Tishrei. They have to fast one day during the month, but it wasn't designated a certain day. He says because of the pasuk in Zechariah, we just learned it doesn't say the date at all. It just says the months. Some are Reed, some are Chamishin. So he brings over there Nachmin Allah. And so he wants to say, therefore, Rabbi Nosson wanted to say that according to Minchas Chinuch, even though we're doing a Sarah B'Teves, we also could commemorate the 5th of Teves also, because it's not a din in the day, it's a din in the month. So if we could do both shittas, even though we're fasting only one day, we don't fast the 5th and the 10th, but according to the Minchas Chinuch, it's possible to have both ideas because it's so massive.
what happened on the 5th?
Well, that's when they heard about it. After
Well, the
after.
fifth is when they heard about it. Okay.
There are other things that, we'll get back to the answer to the question. First, he wants to set up the question a little bit more. There are other things that happen in Chodesh Tevis, like it says in Shulchan Aruch, and we said it in Slichos this morning. It says the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. And there's a question what happened on here. It says, this is quoting Shulchan Aruch. These are the days that Tzoros happened to our fathers, and it's proper to fast. It means it's not fast everybody. The 8th and the 9th is not everybody, but the 10th is. But the 8th and 9th have reasons why they call it Tanis Tzadikim. On the 8th of Teves, the Torah was translated into Greek, through Talmud, and there was a darkness in the world for 3 days. On the 9th of Teves, we don't know what the Tzara was. We're not sure what happened on that day. But there's
Why do we say there was a tzara?
there was a Tzara. We don't know what it was. There was a Tzara. We don't know which Tzara it was. And people talk about, the Yesh Omim Shehu Yom Yisef says Rasofa, which way he says in Slichos today. In Slichos we said it. I know Sinim Yeshefa was Rasofa, and there's a Masorah. What that's the Mishnah also brings down, I think so. That's the day that Yeshu was born. But they didn't want to say what the day was because they couldn't, because of they lived under Christian rule. So they weren't able to say what the fast was about, but they were fasting about that day, which probably comes out by the January 1st. So at that time it was the 9th of Teves. So he first says also that Christianity, the Nasras, has a big connection with translating the Torah. It means that they took the Torah. The Nostrim are saying they're taking the Torah, and the translation into another language was also conquering the Torah. He says that translation into Yavanis is the basis of Nasras. Like it says, and even though it says in the Torah, Bar Hated, that it was written in 70 languages, but it wasn't designated to give to the Goyim. The purpose of translating it wasn't for the Goyim, it was for the Jews. They should have the translations in all the 70 languages, and they would have the nuances of each language, what each word came to express. But it wasn't that it was supposed to give it out to the Goyim. The Goy, even though the Goy is supposed to know the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he's not supposed to take the Sefer Torah and take it into his library, even if he would treat it with a lot of respect. The fact that the Goy takes the Sefer Torah is already a kilkel. It's supposed to be by the Jews. If he wants to know the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he should come ask the Jews, what am I supposed to do? He doesn't have to have the Sefer Torah in order to know what Hashem wants of him, and to know that the Jews, that the historical events are all true, and the Torah is true. He doesn't have to have the Sefer Torah for that. And it's a big kilkel that the Torah was given over to the libraries of the Goyim, like Talmud, and that they have it. It's a kilkel. It's not a good thing. So, and that's how the Nasras eventually developed also, because they took the Torah. They said that it's theirs. So, according to what we said, the Minchas Chinuch, it could be that even though a person is not fasting on the 8th and the 9th and the 5th, but all these other reasons, the Minchas Chinuch is a eitzah for us to be able to include all of these issues in the fast of Asar B'Teves, because in the month of the 10th month, it's possible to include all these different issues. But he'd like to go back to the question, what is the connection between them? The Rambam says that all the tiny years are supposed to be not just a commemoration, but it's supposed to realize that there was a punishment, and we should improve our ways to tshuva to get back whatever we lost because of that time. So it means whenever there's going to be a fast, you have to know what was the kilkel of that time in order to be able to do tshuva. So we have to know what is the tshuva we're supposed to do for Asar B'Teves. What kind of tshuva is the tzara of Asar B'Teves supposed to arouse us to? So the Soda of Ruckman said is that in a word, the point was that the siege of Yerushalayim means that they separated. What did they do a siege? That no communication between Yerushalayim and the rest of the world. That's the kilkel. The kilkel is that Yerushalayim was set out for itself. It was demarcated. It was made for itself, and no communication. Yerushalayim is supposed to be illuminating the world. Yerushalayim is not supposed to be by itself. Yerushalayim is supposed to be Tafkid Allah Ashras Hashchina B'Yisrael. Yerushalayim is the top of Yerushalayim is to make Ashras Hashchina in the world, not as people think an international place, Chas v'Shalom, but it means that the Shechina is shown in Yisrael and to illuminate the rest of the world. It isn't supposed to be only for ourselves. The Ashras Hashchina, the Sanam Yisrael, is supposed to emanate and illuminate the rest of the world. The siege that they made is the opposite. The opposite of the illumination, the fact that Yerushalayim sheds light on the rest of the world. The siege was to make that they're cut off. Of course, And in the physical sense, the siege was in order to make them hunger, in order to be able to capture them eventually. But there's something significant in the siege itself. That was his question. What's the significance of the siege? If it's just the purpose of the conquest. So he says, no, the siege itself is something to fast about, to be pained about, because that's stopping the illumination that the Jewish line is supposed to have on the rest of the world. Lahavdil. So he says, Marshall, when you talk about all kinds of national things, there's national foods, all kinds of cultures. People come to a country, they'll go to Italy, they're going to get the pizza over there. They go to another country. Anybody have any other examples? They go to the culture. They want to taste the culture of that place. They'll go to China. They'll go to Japan. They want to go in to get the culture of what that nationality stands for. So when someone comes to Yerushalayim, he's supposed to get a taste of Yerushalayim. What's Yerushalayim? Ashras Hashchina. Ashras Hashchina. That's what's supposed to be. That's what Yerushalayim stands for. So the tshuva of a
spiritual thing, not like the nation.
Unlike the nations, that is food and all kinds of dvarim gashmiyim. Tam Yerushalayim or Ashras Hashchina. The flavor of Yerushalayim is Ashras Hashchina.
This is his own idea. This is.
I'm sorry. The flavor is what? What is the translation?
The Hashem's residing, Hashem's residence, Hashem's what's the? I didn't say Ashura, Ashura Hashchina. The residing of Hashem of the Shechina amongst us. So that's what Yerushalayim is supposed to be, and there was supposed to be a communication between Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is supposed to emanate. People come to Yerushalayim, they see what Yerushalayim is, and they go to Gentile countries, so they're going to get a taste of their culture. When they come to Yerushalayim, they're going to see a taste of the flavor of Yerushalayim, which means Ashras Hashchina. So the problem of Asar B'Teves was that there was a cutoff. There was a siege that stopped the communication between Yerushalayim and the rest of the world. The tshuva of Asar B'Teves has to be about this lack, the lack that we don't make Yerushalayim to be the source of light for the rest of the world. Our sins caused that the Goyim were able to capture Yerushalayim, siege Yerushalayim, and sever it from being able to shine on to the rest of the world. And that connection over there is about the Choshech in the world, the Torah was translated. All these things are the point that then it's not letting Yerushalayim to have its splendor and the Torah to have its splendor, which is supposed to shine out to the Goyim. They took it, they conquered it. They conquered the Torah, the Nasrus also, the Christianity, they conquered the source. And the truth is supposed to be that it's supposed to be shining out onto the Goyim, not that the Goyim should stop it. It brings on a Gemara Baba Basra that talks about the oil of Leviathan. It's not the subject right now, but it says that Hashem is going to spread it out on the walls of Yerushalayim, and its brilliance is going to shine over the whole world. The nations are going to go by the light of Yerushalayim, and the kings are going to go by the shine of the brilliance of its shine. That's what Yerushalayim is supposed to be. It's supposed to be shining out to the rest of the world. When it talks about the walls of Yerushalayim, it's supposed to be the walls. We're talking about the walls that they besieged. So the walls of Yerushalayim are supposed to be emanating and shining out to the rest of the world. And that lack, that deficiency is what Asar B'Teves is about. And it connects it also to the point about the Shmuah. What is Yom HaShmuah? We said in the beginning that other opinion of what Teves is about the 5th of Teves, the day that they heard in Bavel about the destruction of Yerushalayim after it was destroyed, not the siege a couple of years before, but after Yerushalayim was destroyed, they heard about it in Bavel on the month of Teves after Tisha B'Av. So that's the point also, the same idea. There's a connection between the siege and the hearing. The siege is, according to this pshat, that the siege is that Yerushalayim is cut off from the rest of the world. It's not made to be able to emanate its the people who heard about it later on, they were the ones who were affected. The effect that it has now is no Yerushalayim. What happens Yom HaShmuah? That the day that they hear about it, they say there's no more Yerushalayim that's going to affect us. That's the same idea as the siege. There's a connection between the siege and the Yom HaShmuah, even though it's the two extremes. One is the beginning, one is the far end. But both of them are at this point that Yerushalayim is not emanating, either because you're by the source where it's closed in and now it's not emanating anymore, or you're far away and you see that there's no Yerushalayim coming in anymore. They're not getting the effect of it in Yerushalayim.
But the Goyim are not mourning about that. It's not there. They don't feel that lack.
So we're supposed to.
We are supposed to feel it.
So that was from Reb Nosson Rothman.
What's the idea? Just the layer, it's a beautiful piece, just, the Emetz Shama, but what does that have to do with anything?
I don't know.
Okay,
It
fine.
might mean over there that they're supposed to bring the gula by doing that, but I don't remember.
Okay, fine. But the pieces are very, sheds a lot of light.
Okay. So back to
Pick up.
Pirkei Avos.
Oh, Lev Yaakov, when you have time.
Yes.